I am angry. We should all be angry. Anger has a long history of bringing about positive change. This quote by the Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie in her book entitled We Should All Be Feminists perfectly encapsulates my feelings in our current political climate. I'm not going to mince words here today. I'm disheartened by the direction our country, the greatest country there's ever been for the Jewish people, is taking. I'm worried about the rise in political violence. I'm terrified of the increase in anti-Semitism. But most of all, I'm angry. I'm angry that political extremism has become the norm. There seems to be no more room for nuanced debate or conversation. Some political leaders are literally calling for a civil war while everyone clings to those who hold their exact political views. I'm angry that I'm being told in the most Orwellian way possible that I'm imagining it all and that I'm the problem. There was a time when America's politics were more balanced. There were those on the left and right who worked together for the common good of the people. There were politicians focused on uniting us rather than dividing us. There were news outlets that were less focused on consumer engagement and more focused on finding the truth. I feel as if I've been exiled to some strange reality, some bizarro timeline. I feel lost and scared. I only feel safe amongst my own tribe, however I define it. What do I do at a time like this? I'm inspired by the words of our ancient prophet Jeremiah, who witnessed the destruction of the first temple and of Jerusalem about 2,500 years ago. Regarding those Jews living in exile in ancient Babylon, he writes, "V'dirshu et shlom ha'ir asher higleti etchem shama, v'hitpalalu va'adah el Adonai ki vishlomah yihye lachem shalom." Seek the welfare of the city to which you've been exiled, and pray to God on its behalf, for in its prosperity you shall prosper. In other words, even if our society is controlled by a power that feels foreign to us, we'll be okay as long as we focus on ensuring that everything around us runs smoothly. It demands that we seek change in the political present rather than passively waiting for redemption. We must take action now to restore balance once again in our political landscape. Our Judaism calls us to do this in three ways: to discourage political and ideological extremism, to encourage open dialogue, and to engage in political advocacy promoting democracy. In the past decade or so, political extremism has acted like a magnet, pulling the average citizen further from the center and closer to the edges. Yet Judaism discourages political and ideological extremism, promoting a balanced approach to living in the center of all aspects of life. We call it the golden mean, Shvil HaZahav. It's an ancient concept, the golden mean, rooted in even older teachings on Stoicism by Aristotle and Marcus Aurelius. The medieval Jewish commentator Maimonides writes that all people should strive to live a life devoid of extremes. He says, if a person finds that their nature leads toward one of the extremes in certain character traits, they should bring themselves back to what is proper and walk in the path of the good. This is the straight path, or the golden mean. In other words, a person should take a look at themselves, and if they find they're too extreme in any aspect of life, they should strive to balance that out. Maimonides also writes that constant introspection is a necessary element in any program of personal and spiritual growth. In his view, achieving a balanced life takes constant work. The cheshbon hanefesh that we stress at this time, at the High Holy Day season, really needs to be a 24/7, 365-day-a-year kind of thing to achieve the highest level of growth. Keep in mind that modern media, and especially social media like Facebook and TikTok, is designed to encourage the highest level of engagement. They all make more money when you're appalled by others' views. The more shocked you are, the more likely you are to click on their post and share it. And then they make money, both the influencer and the company itself. Are you going to click on my post entitled, "Everything's fine, people are nice"? Or are you more likely to click on my post titled, "They're right outside your door, they're about to take everything away from you, but if you do this one thing, you and your loved ones won't be destroyed"? Everything around us is designed to encourage political and ideological extremes. In a world where it seems no one is embracing the golden mean, we must be the ones to do so. If everyone is pushing us to take a more extreme opinion on current social and political issues, we must be the ones to stop, take a breath, stand back, practice some introspection, and find a more moderate, nuanced viewpoint. The recent political assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk is a prime example of the allure of political and ideological extremism. Everyone had strong feelings about Kirk, as well as his untimely death. Again, though, the media, and especially social media, they benefit the most when we're all riled up to the extremes. They make more money when we are seething at the mouth, ready to attack anyone whose opinions differ from our own. When we're ready to pounce, we scour the internet, we make posts, we share posts, we post about share posts, we scour for those share posts, we retweet those shared posts. Big tech companies make more money when we embrace political and ideological extremism. In a world where no one is embracing the center viewpoint, the golden mean, Judaism says, be that person. Restoring balance, once again, in our political landscape takes a lot of work. And part of that is engaging in open dialogue. An ancient Jewish proverb states, "Iron sharpens iron. So too does one sharpen another." In other words, if you come at a person with a hard disposition, unable, unwilling to open up, they will reflect that right back at you. How can we make change in our social fabric unless we're willing to talk and we're able to talk with another person to solve the issue? An inspirational leader in open dialogue is Jessamine Rodriguez, who's built her life around combating extremism. Jessamine grew up in Canada, primarily Toronto, and developed an interest in global affairs from a young age. One of her first positions was with the United Nations Development Program, where she worked to develop the economies of various struggling nations around the world. Her most notable initiative was called the Hot Bread Kitchen, in which she taught immigrant and low-income minority women the necessary skills to bake and succeed in the culinary and hospitality industries. Today, Jessamine serves on the board of the Peaceworks Foundation, which strives to encourage interdialogue between both moderate Israeli and Palestinian voices to work towards a goal of peace. And their most notable program is their Emerging Leaders Program, which works to equip future diplomats, policymakers, and global influencers with a pragmatic, solutions-driven understanding of Israel and Palestine. The program targets students on college campuses heading for careers on Capitol Hill or in foreign service, who can be found today in foreign policy, political science, and international affairs programs. So not only is Jessamine Rodriguez working to bring together Israelis and Palestinians for open dialogue right now, she's also working to ensure that U.S. and global policy is dominated by more moderate, nuanced voices whose ultimate goal is peace. Judaism has encouraged diverse, open dialogue for millennia, recognizing that open dialogue and civil discourse are essential to a balanced world. In fact, most Jewish law that's come into existence over the past 2,000 years came from the rabbis arguing with each other. They would rarely attack each other's character, but instead they would use logic to counter another rabbi's argument. We are a people because of open dialogue and civil discourse. The most prevalent example of ancient rabbinic discourse is between the ancient rabbis Hillel and Shammai. Often someone would pose a question to these rabbis, and they would engage in civil discourse to arrive at what the correct answer ought to be. For example, in our prayer, the Ve'ahavta, which is a quote from the Torah, we read that we should recall God's commandments, quote, when we lie down and when we rise up. Of course, this begs the question as to whether the commandment is to be taken literally or figuratively. Should I recite the Shema and Ve'ahavta whilst I'm literally lying down or when I'm literally rising up? The great Shammai believed it was, indeed, to be taken literally. Hillel, meanwhile, believed otherwise. And Hillel asked, to prove Hillel's point, he asked, so what happens if I'm traveling on the road and I'm in the middle of the road and suddenly I know it's time to recite the Shema and the Ve'ahavta. Am I supposed to lie down in the middle of the road? I'll get run over by some very slow-moving wagon. And I'll just sit there like, no, for like 10 minutes. So from this argument, most rabbis accept that the phrase is figurative and means that we say the Shema and Ve'ahavta when we lie down, as in the time that we sleep, as in the evening, and when we rise up, that means when we're awake or during the daytime. So we say the Shema and Ve'ahavta twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And our bodily position is irrelevant. If each rabbi had remained silent on various issues, if these two rabbis hadn't engaged one another in open dialogue and civil discourse, we would never have arrived at the proper halakha or the proper Jewish law. And actually, this applies to all the rabbis. If any of the rabbis in ancient history, throughout history, had remained silent, we wouldn't have any Jewish law. And similarly, if we remain silent today, if we refrain from open dialogue with those of differing viewpoints and opinions, we have no choice but to live in this world of unbalance, and we have no chance of restoring balance in our political landscape. Silence emboldens authoritarianism, Inaction grows autocracy. There's no way to restore, once again, balance in our political landscape unless we speak up and take political action now. Nothing will change by political violence. Nothing will be changed by hate-filled extremist rhetoric. Change will come by doing what we can to engage in political advocacy and preserving our democracy. The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, of blessed memory, who walked hand in hand with Dr. King and Selma, said, quote, "Morally speaking, there's no limit to the concern one must feel for the suffering of human beings. Indifference to evil is worse than evil itself. And in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible." In other words, it's up to each of us to stand up and make a difference. Well, how do we do that? The first thing to do, and the easiest, is to bombard your political representatives with messages. Phone calls, emails, and even handwritten letters. Don't let them rest. Flood them with your opinion. They work for us. They're here to enact your will as the voter. You should be on that phone, that computer, that writing desk, creating messages for political representatives at every level of government. There's no position too small or too big that must remain accountable to the people. Then there's something a little bit more challenging, and it's not something everyone wants to hear. You ready? You need to run for political office. I know it sounds hyperbolic, but I mean it. America needs leaders at every level of government who are willing to work toward a golden mean and engage in civil discourse. We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to do it, just like we Jews can't sit back and just wait for the Messiah, the Mashiach, to come and save the Jewish people. We need help now, and you, yes, you, are the one I'm referring to who must take on the mantle of political leadership. Don't look at the person next to you. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you. If you are unhappy with the current political leadership, take the harrowing plunge and run for office yourself. We must live by the words of Pakistani activist and Nobel Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai. Let future generations say, we were the ones who stood up. We can't stand up by reflecting the same hatred and call for violence that is coming our way. In a land where no one is advocating for political advocacy and democracy, we must be the ones to do so. Because ultimately it comes down to the votes. Each vote matters, even if it doesn't always feel like that. Authoritarians thrive on the populace believing otherwise. If the average person believes their vote doesn't matter because the elections are rigged, they will be less inclined to vote at all. So vote. Preserve our democratic republic by voting when it's necessary. If you're a younger person here and will be of voting age at upcoming elections, you should make sure the first thing you do as an 18-year-old is register to vote. Vote because you're scared. Vote because you're concerned. Vote because you're angry. I am angry, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says. We should all be angry. Anger has a long history of bringing about positive change. This isn't her whole quote. She actually continues on to say, but I'm also hopeful because I believe deeply in the ability of human beings to remake themselves for the better. Yes, I'm angry that we got here. I'm scared about our future. But I'm also hopeful. I know that if I believe in humanity's ability to destroy, I must also believe in its capability to mend. I believe that we can restore once again balance in our political landscape by combating political and ideological extremism while embracing the Jewish concept of the golden mean. I believe that we can restore once again balance in our political landscape by encouraging open dialogue and civil discourse as our ancestors have done for millennia. I believe that we can restore once again balance in our political landscape by being the political change we wish to see, by contacting our representatives, running for political office, and especially by voting. May 5786 be the year that we restore balance once again, so we can move one step closer to a time of peace and harmony for all on earth. Shana Tova.